What's up, guys? We got a lot on today's menu. We have number one in the nation, Georgia, going against number 14, Clemson University. And there's a pretty good bit to talk about. Yes, you have Dabo Swinney. Yes, you have Kirby Smart. You have Kirby, the emerging, prime guy that's on top right now. And then you've got Dabo, who is he fading away? Didn't really look like it, but the way that last year went, the way that the year before went, and a lot of the controversy of DJ 2 years ago and Klubnik, and then last year Klubnik and the not listening and running his own play calls. There's a lot to talk about, and the fact that Georgia's losing a lot or lost a lot last year, and Clemson actually lost a lot too. So, anyways, all right, here we go. We're gonna dive right into it. Okay, first thing is we're going to start off with what all Georgia and Clemson have lost. First, we'll start with Clemson. Last year, Clemson had Bo Collins, who was a very good receiver. You heard a lot of Clemson fans saying, throw the ball to Bo Collins. We don't throw it to him enough. Well, Bo Collins felt the same way. He transferred to Notre Dame. Easily their number two receiver, had 510 yards receiving last year. But he's now at Notre Dame, and they will throw him the ball. That's just how it goes. You also lost Mr. Trotter, who was a linebacker for Clemson, and he had 87 tackles last year. Lost him to the NFL. You lost Will Shipley, who was your second, not second running back, but second in production at running back position, but he was also a receiver out of the backfield. Very good player for Clemson, a very featured player for Clemson. You lost him. You also lost Dominic Thomas to Ole Miss. The reason that that is so important is not only did you lose Will Shipley, but you also lost the third string running back as well. So now you only have Phil Maffa coming back. The other running back that's behind him had 52 yards rushing last year. So not only do you barely have two running backs, we have no idea what's behind him, and we know that there were no transfer portal players coming in. The biggest thing about that is I think Clemson is in that era right now where they are trying their best to make the most of what they have. And we know that. We know that Dabo's pretty good with that. But they do not have the weapons that they're used to having at the outside, and they don't have the quarterback that they're used to having. If you guys saw Clemson's spring game, it was terrible. Now, oh, well, the spring game doesn't really tell much. Spring game, blah, blah, blah. Dude, when your quarterback is when your quarterback's completion percentage is what it was, I think there is terms to worry. I think it's okay to worry about that. And the fact that your backup, we haven't really seen much of a backup lately, but now it's getting to the point where is Phil Maffa going to have to do everything? Kate Klubnik has not shown that he can take over games. We've seen him use his legs in a very crucial time in games, and he actually is a pretty good runner, but he has yet to take over a game with his arm. So that's kind of what we're looking at for them. Next, let's move on to Georgia, what they lost. Georgia. Georgia is losing 4 out of their 5 team leaders from last year, and I mean in stats. You're losing Dejon Edwards, 881 yards rushing. That was your first running back. You're also losing your second running back in Kendall Milton. Well, Kendall had 790 yards rushing. So there's your 1,500 yards rushing right there, 1,600 yards out of the window. Okay. Well, then what else did you lose? You lose Brock Bowers. Guys, Brock Bowers had 714 yards receiving. He's your receiving leader. You lost Tyke Smith, who had 70 tackles last year, which was the most on Georgia's team. And Tyke also led in interceptions with 4. So you're losing all that. The only person you have returning is passing yards. Passing yards, rushing yards, right? Receiving yards, tackles, interceptions. The only one returning, Mr. Beck, Carson Beck, who had 3,900 yards passing last year, compared to Klubnik's 2,800 yards passing. Now, granted, Klubnik's on a different team, but just kind of throwing it out there, these teams play similar ways in the ground and pound play action, like to spruce it up. Clemson does have a second-year offensive coordinator, which we're all curious to see how good they do. They averaged 29 points a game last year. Are they going to be able to step it up? First-year offense coordinator averaging 30 points a game is pretty good. What does his year 2 look like? Georgia, 40 points per game. Now, granted, we had our own first-year offensive coordinator who has been a coach for a good amount of time, but we're looking for Mr. Bobo to mature, especially after what we saw in the Bama game, which is something we're used to as Georgia fans. We're used to the 40 points per game from Bobo and all the stats, and we love it. And then we get into crunch time, and it's like we run a completely different offense. I mean, to the point where if you guys saw the Bama game last year, Carson Beck looks over to the sideline and goes, guys, what the F are we doing? Like, what are we doing right now? Because he was even confused by the play call. He was confused by the scheme that, apparently wasn't working against Bama. And we saw how that turned out. Anyways, I do say that in Georgia losing Brock Bowers, Rosemary Jack Saint, Ra Thomas, and Lad McConkey. Do you realize that's 4 out of our 5 receivers from last year? 4 out of our top 5 receivers last year. You're losing those guys. So you have Dominic Lovett, and we were wanting to have Ra Thomas. Well, guess who we don't have? Ra Thomas. So now we're looking for a lot of people to step up, including Dylan Bell, including Jacoby Young. You have these transfers that have come in at receiver, and we're going to see how it goes. And that's another point that I wanted to make. I know that everybody understands the whole Clemson doesn't take transfer portal players. But what you are having is, it's not necessarily a crisis for college football, but it's a crisis for teams like Clemson. Clemson is trying to get over that hump right now for current. Yes, they've won national championships. They are a great program. Dabo's a great coach. I'm not saying that. But they're trying to get over this hump where this narrative is you guys don't take transfer portal players, so you're not going to improve. And Dabo, being hard-headed, is like, no, I'm going to prove it. We don't need transfer portal players to move on. But what is happening? You have teams that were below average, the upset teams, the Appalachian States, the Utah beating Bama. Those teams, they're starting to fade away. Why? Because the transfer portal is now letting the best player on those teams transfer to bigger and better teams. Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Florida State had 17 transfers come in. We saw Ole Miss dominated the transfer portal. We saw Ohio State and their dominating the transfer portal. Those players are now going to the bigger and better teams. So what happens? Yes, the big get a lot stronger. But then your Clemsons that are trying to get over that hump, who don't take that gap gets further and further away from them and the bigger team. You don't bring in wide receivers. You're used to having good wide receivers. Your fans are used to having good wide receivers. You didn't bring any in. Phil Maffa is the only person you have in your backfield. Your backup to him transferred out. So now your second string running back has 52 yards, and we don't even know who the third string is. You're having to rely on guys who have no production. You're having to rely on guys who have no experience. And in today's age of football, in today's era, that does not work. You can't do that. Especially when guys are bringing in transfers who have 2 years under their belt. Now, you may mess around and get a DJ out of the transfer portal who, craps the bed for the third team in a row that he played for. But I'm just saying, it's a different era of college football. And my prediction on this is that Georgia is going to come out, and I feel like they are going to beat the dog crap out of Clemson. I think defensively, we are going to throw as much as we can at Mr. Klubnik. We are going to make him have to use his feet, use his legs, which he's decent at running. But they're going to make him have to use his arm on the run. And like I said, we have not seen Klubnik take over games. Now, will they have a good game plan? Maybe. But it seems like, 1, we're going to have a fun time stopping their run game. 2, making him pass the ball and throw 40 times, not something that I think he can do in a successful way to win a game. I think he'll have maybe good completion percentage or have good stats, but it's going to be a lot of behind the line of scrimmage, that 2 to 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. I think Georgia's going to obliterate them on offense. I think we're going to do our more normal, run the ball, let it be close in the first quarter because we're just, trying to ground and pound. But it's not Georgia versus Clemson from 3 years ago. This is not that. You have a quarterback in Carson Beck who's going into year 2 that is looking to light it up from beginning to end. And that's what we want to see as Georgia fans. But Clemson plays a lot of man defense. Georgia plays a lot of man and zone defense. They do a good job of mixing it up. What are they going to run against Clemson? I'm thinking they're going to run a lot of zone, but throw a lot of blitzes just to pressure the crap out of Klubnik. I think Clemson is going to try to pressure Carson, but they're going to try to get him out of the pocket or make us stick to the run game. Also, I forgot to talk about transfer portal players. Georgia also got Trevor Etienne, which will be out. So our Mr. Etienne will be out, and Roderick Robinson will be out, which only leaves Branson Robinson, player from last year, the only person we have who has decent, you know, decent running, and he got hurt at the beginning of the year. I said decent production. That's what I meant. But Cash Jones will be there. You'll also have Nate Frazier, the 5-star, who everybody thinks is going to do a great job. From what I'm hearing, from what I've seen, kid's a beast. But I think that kind of about wraps it up. Now we got Cash Jones, who's a super fast running back, but just saying, at the end of the day, I think Georgia is going to make a statement against Clemson. And will it be the kind of statement that forces Clemson fans to finally accept you're not going to get anywhere without the transfer portal? You're not recruiting at a ridiculous rate to be able to outweigh that. So I guess we'll see. Anyways, if you like the video, hit that like button. And if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments.